which is kind of true, except if you open up Ordinance 319-2001, it did not contain a precinct list or description of ordinance or of the precincts. It included a few maps and said that there would be follow-up later. That follow-up came in Ordinance 034-2002, which does include the list of precincts. So, in fact, if you have your little green book, and I picked one up at the council office the other day, in the back, the first ordinance doesn't even appear because it didn't change anything as far as precincts go. Have a couple other things here, but I think that's sufficient this evening. One thing I will mention is the meeting minutes from May 27th, 1993. This has actually come up before. And the answer came back from then Parish Attorney Steve Dupuy that when there was a problem with the precincts, a re-election was required, not for the entire thing. In fact, it says here, the proposed amendments and not a new vote on whether or not there will be a consolidation, but just on the amendment to make the change on the precincts. So that's what I have, and I'm happy to turn over my notes if you like, or what have you. Let me know.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
All right.
Ms. Parissa, followed by Stephen Sy.
1 second, ma'am. I don't have that mic on. Now you go.
Hi, my name is Parissa Mamarian Liu. I'm a resident of District 6. I'm speaking in opposition, excuse me, to the resolution to request an opinion from the Attorney General on the charter amendment election. The time to challenge the election has long since passed. I'd like to remind those present that people have 30 days after an election to challenge it, an option that no one pursued at the time. Indeed, the only reason this has come up is because Mayor Robideau, a known opponent of fixing the charter, reached out to the Secretary of State independently of the council about the issue. The voters have spoken, and what the residents of this community decided is to have two separate councils that will best represent their respective needs. I think the crux of this issue is what you think we voted on. Did we vote on the concept of splitting the council, or were we voting on these particular specific maps? Nobody is suggesting that we do not fix the problems with the maps. Obviously, those problems need to be addressed. It's just how to best address the problem. The LCG Legal Department has issued a strong opinion that this matter is best resolved with an ordinance. Soliciting a legally non-binding opinion from the Attorney General could possibly lay groundwork for a lawsuit challenging the election, a process that will eat up both time and, perhaps more importantly, money, something neither the city nor the parish can afford. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Terrio.
Yes, just to follow up on what the young lady said there is that I want to clarify that she made a comment that the time period in order to challenge this had already come and gone. I want the public and those watching to be aware of, and it's probably most of these council members, I know myself and 3 others, 4 others in particular. The first time that I was made aware that there were problems with precincts, to the magnitude of which individuals would not even have anybody to vote for, was actually when Mr. Escott and Mr. Hefner and Ms. Moe and Mr. Bellard met on Tuesday. I think it was, what, 2 weeks ago from today? Is that when it was? Was it 2 weeks ago? I think it was 2 weeks ago when y'all had the Finance Committee meeting. I think somebody was with y'all. When y'all met initially and y'all were discussing the problems with everything that came up.
We met in Mr. Hebert's office, and I don't recall the date, but it was a Tuesday.
Yes, it was a Tuesday. It was maybe a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. Well, anyway, it just happened so, for everybody here, that I did some research, and there was an email that was sent out by Ms. Moe on December 18th that advised all council members that there were problems with the maps. Then additional ones. There were serious problems with the verbiage. Well, to my surprise, do any of you guys here have any indication or knowledge as to when I actually found out those problems were going to be aware of? This happened to be a couple of days after the time period was to what's the word I'm looking for? To attest the election. How would you say that, Mr. Escott? Challenge it, yeah.
Challenge.
Yeah, it just happened to be, by the time we realized that there were problems, the time to challenge it had already come and gone. So, had a little research done. Number of council members did not even receive the email. You know why? It went into LCG's trash spam folder. So, council members here were not made aware that there was even problems with anything going on until after the challenge period had already ended. Just think about it. Conspiracy? Nah, that wouldn't happen, right? But we've had 4 or 5 times tonight where we're saying there's not a lot of transparency. We need more communication. We're not seeing this. Information's not being given to us. That's the whole reason why this is what it is. We need to make sure that what we're doing is correct. We're not disputing anybody's opinions. I mean, I've spoken to a number of attorneys in Lafayette, and I'll be honest with you, some of them agree with what these individuals proposed. Some of them didn't. Their opinions. And as I mentioned earlier, I think there's going to be legal action one way or another on this, regardless of what happens. But in order to move forward, and what the young lady said is that, you know, the challenge period already came and gone. I wanted to make it very clear. A number of council members didn't even know that there was a problem and issues here. And I did speak with Mr. Moe about it, and we confirmed the same thing, that this was sent on December 18th to Mr. Escott, to the administration, to all council members. Got with the IT department, and it had gone into the trash spam filter. Never knew about it. Your elected officials never knew. Maybe some knew, I don't know, but I certainly didn't know. I can't speak for anybody else. Didn't know that there were any issues until after the challenge period just happened to be finished. So I'll tend to any further comments.
Oh, sorry about that. Mr. Escott?
Yes, sir. I need to respond to simply provide some additional facts. On December 18, 2018, at 2:57 p.m., Ms. Charlene Menard sent an email to Ms. Veronica Williams, the clerk of the council, and she copied me along with several others, including the entire city council, city parish council. I get a copy of an email that's sent to Ms. Williams from Ms. Menard on 18th of December, and I see all of you get it as well. Nobody calls me. I don't get with the IT to confirm that you get a copy. So from the legal department standpoint, I know as much as you know on the same date and the same time that Charlene Menard sends that email out. The next day, December 19th, Mike Hefner indicates that he's going to review Ms. Menard's email, but he believes at worst it's a minor correction by ordinance. On that particular email, he includes Mr. Castile, myself, and Mr. Hebert. Why he decided not to include everybody and just reply all, you're going to have to ask Mr. Hefner. The day following that, December 20th, Mr. Hefner says, he sends an email and he says he believes he's found the issue, quote unquote, which will not require action of the council after all to resolve it. So within 2 days of December 18th, I'm being informed, oh, false alarm. We don't even have to go back to the council to resolve. I think it's resolvable on its own. I send an email to Mr. Hefner that same day, asking for confirmation and clarification that no action by the council or the legal department is going to be necessary. He agrees. I respond that it then appears at this point there's nothing further that we need to do, we being the council and LCG, relying on the demographer and the register of voters, that we're good to go. That's December 20th. Dead silence. Dead silence. From December 20th to February 7th. February 7th, I get an email that is also sent to the council, to the Secretary of State, to Veronica Williams, declaring, once again, we have an issue with the Home Rule Charter versus the maps. December 20th, between December 20th and February 7th, I hadn't heard a word. And I was told it's good to go. The next day, February 8th, Mr. Hefner sends an email saying he believes he has a theory as to what the problem may be, and he hopes to have it resolved by midweek, if not earlier. Once again, no indication that I need to get involved, that the council needs to get involved, or that we have some fatal error or inconsistency. Because of that, we start to talk about setting up a meeting with Mr. Menard, Miss Menard, Mr. Hefner. Mr. Chairman Bellard asked, rightfully so, to get involved, and we scheduled the meeting. I believe we had the meeting on February 19th. Because of calendars, we had trouble getting it. We were trying to get it that week. Going into that meeting, I had Mr. Mike Hebert, the former city parish attorney and now my assistant city parish attorney, attend that meeting with Mr. Bellard, Ms. Menard, and Mr. Hefner. Going into that meeting, Mr. Hebert or myself or Chairman Bellard had no idea of the significance of the problem or the resolutions of the problem. We learned on February 19th, we left the precinct out, there might be some boundaries that need to be adjusted, yada, yada, yada. That's the first time I, along with Mr. Hebert, were informed of the real issue. From February 19th to February 25th, we were headed to the Secretary of State's office in Baton Rouge to meet and talk about the issue. The research began, the memos started to be drafted, and it took us a considerable amount of time and effort to get to this book, which is our opinion, which I am extremely confident in its accuracy. Those are the facts. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let me talk.
Mr. Terrio, your mic's hot.
Yeah, but by no means, Mr. Escott, was I trying to say, I understand where you came from. I have an additional question because the additional correspondence that you were having with the demographer council and nobody else were copied on that, correct?
Not that I mean, I'd have to check what I have as far as copies, but I don't know.
From the 18th forward, you said nobody was. A couple of people were, but in the future, not the whole council was, and you didn't know about it until I think it was what, February the 8th or 6th or whatever. But even at that point, we didn't know any problems were happening until I think you mentioned it was February 18th. That's when everything came out to everybody, hope there's major problems, which was well beyond the challenge period.
Yeah, there are other emails that are being sent out. I believe February 7th, the entire council's included again, and it's all a big long string of what the problems are. February 8th, council's on it again, all of the council. So in my mind,
You're thinking everybody's getting it, and
I
we're
think
not.
I'm getting it along with you guys. I have no idea, and this is the first I have ever heard of any email going to any of the council members that they didn't receive because it went to spam. So I wouldn't have known to check, say, oh, I hope this doesn't happen again, you know, that kind of thing. So,
Okay, if we can, I think we're kind of going over the
Yeah,
same thing.
I'm good.
I
I'm
don't
good.
mean any disrespect to either one of y'all,
no,
but
that's fine.
we're talking,
Yeah.
thank y'all.
Thank you.
Ms. Williams, speaker, please.
Stephen Sack, followed by Ashley Mudd.
Name is Stephen Sack. I'm a resident of District 8, and I just want to say that I think this resolution is a good idea, only because it's going to slow down the process. I've heard a lot tonight about,
Mr.
Other
Sack,
thing, but-
Mr. Sack,
yes,
if you could raise up the mic so you could be recorded. Thank you.
in my view, this whole process is being rushed, and it's something of such magnitude that it should not be. It should be done carefully. It should be done studiously. You all are paid to look out for the city residents, and that's exactly what I'm looking for you to do. I want you to do what's best, and I don't want you to rush it. I want you to be patient, and I want you to be studious in your drafting of it. I heard many times tonight that the people voted on this, and we did. I voted. But what I voted on was the split of the council. I didn't vote on the resolution. I didn't vote on the districting. I didn't vote on any of that. Nothing else except the split has been put before the people. So therefore, I say, y'all doing your job, but let's do it better. Let's slow it down. If it takes getting a second opinion from the Attorney General, I say let's do it. But most importantly, slow it down, be patient, make sure you get it right. I don't want to have to come back and vote for it again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Ashley Mudd, followed by Wallace Senegal.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm a homeowner and resident of District 4, and also here representing the Fix a Charter PAC. I'm here to encourage all of you to vote against the resolution, inviting the Attorney General to weigh in on the path forward. I'll try to be succinct because I know we have a long agenda ahead of us. On December 8th, the voters in Lafayette Parish voted to amend our home rule charter and split our current council into a city and parish council. Regardless of the precinct errors, there is no question what the intent of the voters was. The precinct errors in the amendment can and should be fixed by a simple ordinance. The only appropriate solution moving forward is to adopt the introductory ordinance later on this evening's agenda. This issue, then, with inviting the AG to weigh in, carries a risk of opening a Pandora's box of negative effects. How long will the process take? How long will democracy be delayed? And what happens if he calls for a re-election? And honestly, if a legal and fair election can be reversed, we truly have an issue with democracy in Lafayette. The charter, in its current state and as amended, allows the council to reapportion districts and to redraw districts through local ordinances. In addition, in '85, the AG at that time weighed in that governing authorities can reapportion districts any time between censuses. Delaying and waiting on the AG opinion can include not having a council seated this fall. That means all of our term-limited councilmen can hold their seat longer for an extended time. Why is an AG opinion worth the risk? In addition, LCG's legal team has already concluded that the charter prohibits an election on the same issue for 1 year after an election. So the council will be prohibited from calling an election on this amendment until December 7th. More waiting. Again, reapportionment by ordinance will address any and all discrepancies, errors, and omissions in the voter precincts. This is the only sensible path moving forward. I understand why this resolution was written, and I understand the idea that we want to mitigate risk. But the reality is, there's a lot of important things to note and the risks that actually behold LCG and Lafayette as a whole if this resolution passes. We have to consider the risk associated with passing this resolution, and we must provide voters certainty in their districts and not further delay the maintenance of democracy. Again, I'm asking that each of you vote no into asking the AG to weigh in on this issue because we have a clear resolution at hand and it's already on your agenda tonight. Voting yes does not just undermine this election, it undermines all elections and the will of our voters.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, please.
Wallace Senegal, followed by William Linedecker.
Yes, good evening, councilmen and council ladies and Mayor President Joe Rubidoux. My take on this resolution here, I say go for it. Let the AG, Attorney General, get his opinion or his facts in the law, you know. Because really this December the 8th election, as far as I'm concerned, set us back 50 years, you know. I would like to see it done right. We had councilmen, 3 councilmen that was basically the narrator of all of this here, fixed the charter. I don't see fixing the charter got fixed. I see fixing the charter got all broken up. Because first of all, you guys went and y'all took Mike Heffernan into a private room and said, this is what we wanted, and all the other council wasn't involved in it until the end. I didn't understand that one, you know? But gerrymandering, this here, what we voted on being gerrymandered. And for those that don't understand, gerrymandered is called segregation. And I have asked Mr. Heffernan already when he was redistricting the school board. So in other words, you're bringing back segregation. He told me he couldn't use that word. And this is what I feel he's done to the district that I live in, is gerrymandering us out of the district that we voted for originally. You know, we voted for a councilman originally. Now all of a sudden, the councilman that we voted for is not even in the district anymore. You know, he's gonna be redistricted, and other people are gonna come in my district that ain't taking care of the district that they got now properly, you know? And I don't mean to throw him under the bus or anything like this here, but I know this. There's a lot of things that he claimed he sit on the council for 12 years. A lot of things he haven't done. A lot of things he have done. But I don't need him in my district taking care of anything that I got going on in my district that he ain't taking care of in the district that he's supposed to be representing now, you know? So I say, I go with you guys that want to take it to the Attorney General. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
William Linedecker, followed by Don Bertrand.
Bill Linedecker again. Ashley Mudd said it much more eloquently than I could ever say it. On December the 8th, I voted to split the councils into two. I did not vote on whether or not the precinct line should be on West St. Mary University. Splitting the council was my utmost objective. Okay? I have full faith and confidence in our legal department. I say let's move forward. Let's get started. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Don Bertrand, followed by Stephen Hebert.
Good evening. It's good to see some of you again, if not all of you.
Be careful, that feeling might be mutual.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. As a councilman previously, and serving with 5 of you, all of you will recall, I hope, that over the course of those years, you dealt with reapportionment on many, many occasions. Nobody called for an Attorney General's opinion on any of them, and sometimes we dealt with demographers, sometimes we dealt with legal descriptions and maps, because you are the final authority according to your charter, and you're backed up by state law. The Attorney General has no jurisdiction here. He can give you an opinion. It's worth the paper it's written on. Your best opinion is going to come by those who know the charter best, and that will be your local opinions. I think you need to get rid of the resolution and just move on about your business, because you are going to be the final authority on making the changes that need to be made on the minor description errors. And I just want to reiterate to everyone in this community that these types of errors are made all the time, whether it's in property law, mineral law, or if it's dealing with legal boundaries or political boundaries. And believe me, I spent 20 years working on just this, trying to get this changed in December. And it didn't come out the way I thought it would come out. I didn't see a perfect ordinance and a perfect outcome, but I saw enough that I could live with until we have the opportunity to fine-tune that ordinance to deal with other issues that I think need to be addressed. So I'm going to ask you, because you seem to be in the habit tonight of getting rid of resolutions, I'm going to ask you to do yourself a favor and drop this resolution. You don't need it. You can get another opinion, but it will not change the authority that you have and the responsibility you have to make the changes in the ordinance. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Mr. Bertrand, hang on a second. You bring up a good point. I actually did a little research. I'm going to give the credit where the credit is due. I think the gentleman, Mr. Lunsford, in the back had pulled it up because, number one, what was done here, and we keep hearing the word reapportionment. This is not reapportionment.
It is.
Hang on a
It
second.
is reapportionment.
Hang on a second. Went back and did research. The times that we did it on the council when you were with us, we actually looked, it was because of population shift. Every one of the instances that the council did it, but this right here is not because of population shift. This was changed because of something else.
And I don't disagree with you, but we also reapportioned precincts, cut them in half, moved them.
Because of population.
Okay, but that's reapportionment. And whether you do reapportionment, the whole reason for this vote was reapportionment.
Actually,
Mr.
no,
Terrell.
the whole reason for the vote was to split the two councils.
And what are those areas of political jurisdiction? They are reapportionment.
So why was it done right before the census coming out, and it was the apportionment was going to happen, the redistricting was going to happen in a year?
Gentlemen, that's going to be.
I know, it's a whole different area.
I don't want to argue
got
that
you.
question because
Hang on, hello.
I don't want to
Okay,
argue.
this is about either we want the AG opinion
Yep.
or we don't. So
Yep.
let's just stick to that.
Thank you, and I'll be glad to take that up with you later, and I'll be back for the ordinance later. I just want you to know that you have the authority, you have the responsibility, you have the ability to make the necessary changes. Thank you for your
Thank you.
time.
Now we know why you say some council members when you got up there, right?
Thank you, sir. Next
No
speaker.
disrespect, man.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Stephen Abear, followed by Ricky Horty.
Thank you very much. My name is Stephen Abear. I am a citizen of District 8, and I'm here tonight. Speaking of eloquent, I will second Mr. Bertrand's and Ms. Mudd's comments. They definitely said it much more eloquently than I did, made several of my points, so I won't keep you very long. So the question is, why not? Why not just get an opinion? Or what would it hurt? And that is what I want to speak to you. You cannot insulate yourself against litigation. No matter how this goes, you'll probably get sued. And AG's opinion will only determine who's going to sue you. And you don't need this. We have a local opinion, legal opinion, and 2 attorney general's opinions already. One of the big jeopardies, and why not, is you could possibly put the fall elections in jeopardy. That will create a great deal of uncertainty and confusion. What happens in chaos and uncertainty and confusion? Nothing gets done, right? So what will happen to your ability to accomplish for the people of Lafayette while our elections are in confusion or in jeopardy? Nobody knows who they're running for which council seat. What's going to happen for the next 6, 8, 10 months? Nothing's going to get happen towards building a better Lafayette City and Lafayette Parish. I personally hope you will defeat this ordinance here, not call for an AG's opinion, and we move straight to the ordinance and get this fixed by council ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Williams, next speaker.
Ricky Horty, followed by Andrew Abear.
And then, Mr. President, members of the council, I rise in support of getting an Attorney General opinion. Under your home rule charter, talks about introduction of proposed ordinance, which is House Rule Section 212. Introduction of proposed ordinance in writing at a meeting of the council in a form of required for adoption. You did that on December 8th when you approved the ordinance. Subsequently to that, you're moving, and then you advertise it in its official journal by title. That's what the people saw. That's what they recognized, that's what they read. However, we all know, I would like this to be read and recorded in the minutes too, please. We all know that reapportionment is a fancy word for repealing, amending the charter. The electors who was affected by the previous decision, do it mean the process will have to be restarted from scratch, since the newly developed precincts lines was not part of the package, not what they voted for, of the newly adopted deconsolidated charter vote by the electors. Will this matter have to go back to the voters to decide on the redistricting? Back in May 27 of 1993, Councilman Linwood Broussard asked legal city parish attorney Steve Dupree, since the newly developed precincts lines were not part of the package voted by the electors, will this have to go back to the voters? And the answer was a long yes. You have the records, you have the minutes, you could pull it up. I'm just asking this August body to comply with the state and federal law, get pre-clearance, do what you have to do. We just finished with the 2010 census, now we're approaching the 2020 census. Just make sure that all the laws are complied with. If you have nothing to hide, then why not comply? Just ask for Attorney General. That's all I ask this August body to do, and I would appreciate that. I have no other comments. Thank you all very much for the time.
Thank you, sir. Next
Yes,
speaker,
sir.
Ms. Williams.
Andrew Abear, followed by Miles Mott.
Happy New Year. Again. I have a copy of the proceedings of the parish council meeting in which they had, I believe y'all call it a doctor's opinion about how to fix the charter. I'll give this to your secretary. I'd like it recorded in the minutes. Since you've changed the city of Lafayette's governing authority, the LPUA, so I asked for an opinion from the council and the attorneys. When did they call an election to change their governing authority? They never did. So I want you to expand on this and ask the Attorney General if the LPUA should have had a concurring ordinance calling for an election to abolish itself and replace it with the city council. Please add that amendment. In addition, I have the minutes of the meeting of the Consolidated Government's Charter Committee meeting minutes of January 25th, 2010. We have another doctor's opinion, a lawyer. Amendments to the Home Rule Charter, January 25th, 2010, presented by Patrick S. Ottinger, City Parish Attorney. Calling of elections. After the State Bond Commission approves, the pre-clearance from the Department of Justice for the election is sought. The pre-clearance from the Justice Department is sought. After pre-clearance is obtained, the package of ordinances and other materials must be submitted to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State must approve the wording of the proposition. Question: did you get DOJ approval prior to submitting to the Secretary of State? According to this attorney, that's the process. I told you he had problems with this. Involved on the front end. I believe that's a quote from you, Mr. Cox, tonight. We should have been involved on the front end, we the citizens. Are you the governing authority of the newly amended Home Rule Charter? Are you? No, you're not. You're operating under the existing home rule charter. That's what you got to follow. Period. I'm curious how you're going to number the ordinance for the council that you're going to change that you're not a governing authority of. Is it going to be an ordinance of the city parish council to the ordinance of the new city council and the new parish council? It's interesting. This is the constitution of our government. When the U.S. Constitution is amended, can the legislature just go in there and say, oh, by the way, we missed that word. We changed that word on you. It was just a typo. I don't think so. I think y'all have serious problems with this. Please ask the Attorney General if the LPUA should have called for the election. I will give you a copy of this by Mr. Ottinger for you to put in the records. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Williams, next speaker, please.
Miles Mott, and then Pat Trahan.
Council, again, I'll be very short. I want to make it clear I'm just speaking as a private citizen now, not on behalf of DDA. I think that the Attorney General should not be involved in this. First, for a couple of reasons. First of all, Paul Escott used to set the curve in our class at LSU Law School, and I think he's just as smart as the Attorney General. Second of all, I don't think the Attorney General's opinion, legally, it's barely rises to the level of being persuasive. But in this particular case, I think if you introduce it, it's just going to slow things down. If somebody's going to challenge this in court, just stop it now and let them challenge it. Try to let them get a stay order if they need to do it, and let's move on. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Pat Trahan, followed by Carol Ross.
Hi, I'm Pat Trahan. I'm a resident of District 3, and this issue, it seems to me that nearly everyone who was for fixing the charter initially is still for fixing the charter and is against having a revote. And it seems like nearly everyone who was for fixing the charter wants to, keep it this way and not have a revote. And I know that there are some exceptions, but I'll bet you that the congruency between who was for it originally, which I'm for it. I work on behalf of it, so I see it as a minor issue. And most people who supported Fix the Charter see it as a minor issue. Most people who were against Fix the Charter see it as a big deal, and we need to have a do-over. And I just think, that most of us, myself included, are probably looking past the era that happened and the severity of the era, and we're just defaulting to the position that we had initially. And, the people have spoken, the people voted. You guys have a lot of authorities, and y'all exercise your authorities well, but the highest authority in our democracy is the vote of the people. And I think that the people voted, and we should let that vote stand. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Carol Ross, followed by Jeremiah Supple.
Good evening, Carol Ross, District 8. I won't get into the weeds. It's late, and everybody knows the issues, I think. Although I share Mr. Escott and Mr. Terrio's pain, we felt left out pretty much too. In terms of the demographer that was hired, what's the process of giving out a contract? Normally it's proposed and voted on by the council, by the full council, to award a contract. But as I recall, Mr. Hefner was working pro bono, and the contract had never been voted for. And so initially, I still don't know who paid for him, et cetera. So I think the process was really rushed in a lot of ways, and I think that is why we're having these problems right now. I'm not going to get into the weeds. I think Mr. Lunsford made some excellent points. Mr. Hebert, who knows the charter probably better than anyone, made some excellent points as well. So my overall question to you is, what's the harm? You get an Attorney General's opinion, what's the harm? It will satisfy a lot of people, and maybe the lawsuits won't be filed, maybe they will be. What is the harm with getting another opinion? Why saddle these new governments that are coming in under a cloud of questions? What's the harm in getting another opinion? Simple question. And I think you can answer it this evening very simply. And it may obviate any litigation. It may do away with any need. It may satisfy a lot of people's minds in this whole thing, because many of us felt that it was so rushed. And we still feel that way. And we felt that it should wait for the demographic shifts to decide how these new governments would take shape. These are serious issues. Was the Justice Department consulted on some of we have minority districts that are coming into play. Was the Justice Department consulted? Are we sure we pass muster in that way? I'm done. What's the harm? Ask the opinion, and let's move forward.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, Ms. Williams.
Jeremiah Supple, followed by the final speaker, Ann Swanson.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you all. I believe that the public feels this process to amend the charter was done in haste. And I'm going to disagree a little bit with my good friend, Mr. Trahan. I don't think there's one side that doesn't want to fix it and one side that does want to fix it. I think both sides want to fix it. Both sides want to fix it. We realize that it needs to be fixed. But because it was done in such haste, the public, as well as some of the members of the city council, really didn't get enough time to adequately look at the final document. Now, I went to a town hall meeting, and Mr. Castile was there, Mr. Conk was there, and Ms. Cook was there, and I was assured, I was given your word, which was confirmed by Mr. Castile and Mr. Conk, that we would have adequate time, no less than 2 weeks, once the final document was, the amendment was drawn, that we would be able to study this and visit with our representatives before this vote. And as I remember, I think it might have been 4 days that this final document was actually completed, and then before you guys brought it up for vote. Now that in itself maybe is not, maybe that's just the only way you could have done it. I'm not suggesting anything here, but in an effort to show good faith, and in an effort to be prudent, and I think that it's only prudent that you get an Attorney General opinion, and I ask that you show good faith and vote to seek this AG opinion. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, Ms. Williams.
Final speaker, Ann Swanson.
Hello, my name is Ann Swanson, and I am a resident of District 6, the Honorable Bruce Cox District. Thank you, Bruce, for all you do. And I want to thank the entire council and all the elected officials here for your role in maintaining our democracy. Kevin, I was especially touched with your words earlier when you said how much you were supporting the fire district vote and then it failed, but you embrace that concept of democracy and you know that the people's will should stand. So probably everyone here remembers that, because I believe everyone in here voted, that on the morning of the election, it was cold and it was pouring rain. And I had volunteered to be a sign holder in support of Fix the Charter. And I was seriously thinking about canceling. And my husband begged me to cancel, even though he was in support of the charter amendment. But I decided to go, and I decided to go because I thought, you know what? I bet me standing out there in the rain all bundled up would make people who were in support of the charter, they make them say, man, I was going to skip voting, but she's standing in the rain. I I can go to the polls. Maybe some people were still undecided. And so I thought that my voice mattered, and I knew that my voice mattered, and it was confirmed within 15 minutes of me standing with some other volunteers out there that my husband, who had begged me to stay home, came out and joined us with his yard sign as well. And also I know other people in this community who I respect and who were against fixing the charter, at least in this way. They didn't want to fix it this go round, or they didn't want to fix it with their process, and they stepped out, and some of them were nervous about stepping out, but they stepped out too because they believed that their voice mattered. And we did this because we are all participants and we are all actors in democracy. And democracy is one of, if not the most sacred shared value that we have as a society and that we hold precious. And if you look around the world in countries that where their democracies are failing, the first thing you see when that happens is that the people lose trust in their relationship. And democracy is our relationship with our government. And like any relationship, like a friendship, a business partnership, like a marriage, that you have to maintain and build that trust on an ongoing basis. And once you lose it, once you break it, can you build it back? Sometimes you can, but it is so much harder to lose that trust than it is to build back that trust. And so I'm going to end with this. If I believed, and if we lived in a world where our elections didn't matter, or our votes didn't matter, I would have stayed home that Saturday morning, and I would have been warm, and I would have been dry. But I would live in a world where my voice doesn't matter. And I don't want to live there. So I ask the council today to please oppose this amendment, to take the advice of the LCG legal counsel, and to more important than anything, to advocate for and support the clear will and mandate of the people of Lafayette City and Lafayette Parish.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other speakers?
Is there a Michael Colvin who had requested to speak? Michael Colvin?
He signed in.
Okay. No, sir.
Councilwoman Cook.
Yes, I would just like to say a couple of things. I just wanted, first of all, to be clear in where I'm coming from. I supported the Fix the Charter. I think I respect the will of the public. The vote was cast. The public supports this charter split. Call it a personality flaw. Maybe Mr. Bujo might call it a personality flaw, but I do like to get other opinions. I am, a teacher by profession, and I like to make sure that I know all the options, I understand all the ins and outs. And so that is truly the direction that I'm going with this particular resolution. I do have a question of Paul, if you could make Paul's. By seeking this AG opinion, we are in no way restrained from passing an ordinance to correct by ordinance, correct?
Correct.
So we have an intro tonight. Even if we pass this resolution to seek an AG opinion, we're still able to move forward with the ordinance, even with final adoption. Because again, if I'm sorry, go ahead.
If you so chose and voted that way, yeah.
Okay, because again, we're looking at just an opinion, another opinion, and once we weigh all those opinions, which I'm comfortable with the first two we've gotten, but again, call it a personality flaw. I feel like there is one more out there that maybe would be beneficial for us to have at least requested that. So again, I just wanted to make that clear, and I wanted to make that clear that we could still move forward, so that the discussion about delaying everything is not necessarily relevant here. We can still move forward with our ordinances to make the corrections, because
Yeah, and the only thing that I would say, I guess, as an additional help to you in making the decision you need to make is, certainly one would ask you the question of, if you're going to ask for an AG opinion, why would you go forward with the ordinance until you got the AG opinion back? So,
Again, I look at it as just weighing all the options. And so that if someone were to come back and say, well, you passed this ordinance, but it really was not, it's not binding, or it's the wrong decision, basically I feel like I would have gotten all my opinions to where I could argue that point that no. 2 out of the 3, if that's the way it goes, I'm going to go with the 2 out of 3 odds as being the best opinion. So again, I just wanted to make sure that was...
Right, there would be no legal impediment for the council to go forward on the ordinance.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Seeing no other council discussion, please call for the vote.
Mike?
District 3? Yes. District 4?
No.
District 5?
Yes.
District 6?
No.
District 7?
Yes.
District 8?
No.
District 9?
Yes.
District 1?
No.
District 2?
No.
The motion fails.
Please read number 10.
Resolution 16, 2019, a resolution of the Lafayette City Parish Council supporting the legislation in the upcoming session relative to yearly 2% pay increase to employees of the Lafayette Police Department.
I need a motion and a second. Motion by Councilman Lewis, a second by Councilwoman Cook. Councilman Boudreaux, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first question is to Mr. Escott. Did you draft this resolution? Or did you, on behalf of the department, or who? And the reason I'm asking is, I'm trying to, I want to, before I start my comments, I want to know exactly where did the language come from as far as the entire body of the language in the resolution.
I don't believe any of I don't believe the legal department was involved in this resolution at all, whether drafting, review, approval, etc. I don't recognize it, and I don't know that I ever was asked to assign a lawyer to it.
Chief, do you know, and I'm trying to determine the language that's within the resolution, where did that come from? In particular, referencing the 3% trigger for the 2% increase.
Toby Aguilard. That language that's in the proposed legislation is language that we took from a previous proposed legislation.
Okay.
I think some years ago that it was attempted back then, and we just simply went with the same thing we had tried before.
Okay, all right. So it was the department who self-put that on as far as that information?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. So, and let me, while you're here, let me just say, I know we had a few attempts to get together, and I want to apologize to you from not being able to get to you in advance, as well as one of the lead people in the union, David. I apologize for that, although we did have a chance to speak today. For the first time in my 11-plus year career here, I'm not going to be supporting the police department on this particular resolution. And I'm going to tell you why. I think that this resolution is not the answer to what the needs are. I am still in support and prepared for as long as I'm here to pursue what I believe to be the only true answer for what law enforcement needs, and that's a public safety revenue fund, so that the department would forever not have to look back on how they're going to meet their needs. This particular effort here, I think, gives false hope to the men and women of the department, and I think it's a bad message for the public that we can fix our shortfalls with these types of measures. I support you guys and I will continue to, but my message today is, it's not no, but it's not now. One of the reasons I say it gives false hope, I pulled the tax records for the city of Lafayette collections, and we're trying to address a need that exists, and by putting that rise in 3% trigger in there, we would not have met that for the last 3 years. That's why I don't think it's the answer. 2% would not go into effect because the last 3 years we haven't increased our sales tax collections by 3%. In one of those years we were actually negative in our collection, which I think is problematic. It's not the answer, and I think it's bad for the department. When there is an increase, and that follows that decrease that I referenced, that money then is no longer available to make up the shortfalls from the previous year. I consulted with finance, and I don't know if this was taken into consideration. This would have a huge impact on the general fund, meaning that 65% of the collections of the sales tax goes to dedicated capital. The remaining 35% is what we're dealing with here. A pro forma was done. If a 3% increase in city sales tax from last fiscal year would increase revenues to the tune of about $2.3 million, a little more than that. But again, 35% is for the general fund is what we're dealing with here. 65% cannot be touched. What is not answered in this, and what I think we need to know before going forward, is if these projections are inclusive of the TIF district. TIF district funds cannot be spent on anything but the TIF district. It cannot be used for salaries of the PD. So with that said, it would leave a balance of about $833,000. 2% of that would use up about $458,000, which means the general fund would only be getting half. I do not think that is good for our budget. Another reason is state mandates has been a killer for local government. I think what this council is considering is a state mandate on ourselves. If in fact that is what we desire to do, I do not think we need the state to tell us to give the police department what we think they should have. Many have compared this to the fire department, which took place, I think, over 60 years ago. I will tell you that if the fire department came today for this, I would tell them I cannot support that because I don't think it's good budgeting. So if this is going to be considered tonight, the first thing I want you to know is that, and not you, Chief, I'm talking to the group here, that I intend to have an amendment. If we're going to offer 2%, and if we're going to the state has to invest 1% from the city, 1% from the state. Otherwise, we don't need the state to tell us how to spend our money. Unfunded mandates contribute to our inability to fund other services that we have been sued for. Judges, courthouse, jail, DA, and others. So let's go to raises. We just had a 2% across the board that was vetoed. And Chief, you know what, I'm a respectful ask, if you don't mind, step away from the mic.
Yes, sir.
And I'm saying that because I don't want this to seem like I'm talking to you. I'm talking to the public and to this council right now and what's being considered. So that's respectfully, I'm asking you to do that. We just had a 2% across the board that was very contested by this council. We heard things like the ability to bond, our bonding capacity, our portfolio, and all of that. I don't know how that has gone away. The uncertainty of sales tax came into play. I think the record reflects that January, we were down, if I could pull it up, little over $100,000 in January in collections, 2019. I'm alarmed that the concerns that was expressed then have somehow gone away. My love for the police department remains, and I want to also remind us of what we've done in the last 8 months or so. July of 2018, police sergeant promotions. November 1st, 2018, 2% across the board, which the department was a part of. February of 2019, 6% for 6-year corporals. I could tell you in my time here, after multiple pay plans for the police department, the corporal issue was the most major and final issue that we have addressed historically as to real corrections needed within the department. Keep in mind, these things are being set on the fact that doing something for our department is very honorable. This here is not the answer. The local bill was pre-filed by a legislator that is not local. And I have a conversation with that gentleman, and he was doing it as a courtesy for this government. He has some concerns that he has expressed, but he said, if I do anything to make the council and this government know that he is not trying to interfere in the municipal business of Lafayette. Council, we have a challenge before us. If we want to do something for the department, and if we want to do something to a huge magnitude, if it requires doing some other very tough decisions and courageous things, we need to do them. But to piecemeal and band-aid a situation by putting this 2% on a 3% trigger in effect is just not right. For me personally, it's too late in the process. I have been trying since I have been here to get a public service revenue fund available, in particularly for police and fire, to where we would never have to again worry about how we're going to fund those departments as they grow, as demand, as services are needed. For me, it's ironic that we're having a conversation, or we are considering something that I said I would never do, and that's put a mandate on a future council. Obviously, I'm termed out. I am not going to wait until my last year to make such a huge decision to put on an incoming council that they will not have control over. The first and greatest issue that I've done since I've been here is protect the people within my community from the Greyhound bus station locating on Moss and Matthew Street. And that was a 12th hour, last minute deal cut by a previous council that the new council had to deal with. And thank God we was able to deal with it. At this point, it is my opinion that an issue of this magnitude, which could have been addressed any time well before now, be left to those of you who may return, both administratively and legislatively, and for those new members coming on. And it's for those reasons that I, Kenneth Boudreaux, cannot do this. 2% is not going to get it. and 2% on a 3% trigger, meaning they would not have gotten it for 3 years. We still in the same place. If we want to do something, let's do it. But let's not play with these employees, and let us not forget all the other 2,000 employees in consolidated government. Those are my comments for now.
Councilman Lewis.
Thank you. Chief, can you come back up, please? As far as the raises, if the sales tax are not where we would like them to be, does your employee still get the raises?
Sorry, Chief, hang on. There you go, sir.
So in the current proposed legislation, there would be a trigger at 3%. And so it would just depend on where our revenues are as to whether or not they get it. The economy being what it is as of late, it sounds as if we probably wouldn't have gotten it the last few years. But looking towards the future, we're hoping the economy will pick up. And it was never our intention, as far as the police department, is to break the city. And after talking individually with many of you over the past several months, I know a trigger was wanted. And so I just simply went with something that had been proposed before.
Okay, so and saying that, why is there such a need for your police officer to get this raise every year, if we allow you to have it?
Well, it's just, right now Lafayette Police, among the law enforcement agencies in Lafayette Parish, have the lowest starting pay. We lost, I believe, 28 officers last year. Most of them left my department to go work for another police agency where they were making more money. And so this is a conversation, unfortunately, I think we're going to have, and we're going to have to continue to have, depending particularly on what happens tonight. The fact is, it's more and more competitive. Being a police officer today is tough. Being a police officer in Lafayette is a tough job. We're fortunate to have the type of folks we have, but I'm afraid we're not going to be able to keep the caliber of officer we have for long unless we really address this issue.
And what is the starting pay for our police officer?
I can't give you the exact number. Is the chief deputy here? 36.4.
36.4. And these guys are risking their life every day for that money. So and I will support this because I think they really need it. Not that I think, I know they do need it. And I know other employees would love to have it. And I did ask many times since I've been on the council for our accountant, which he provided me this year, to see the impact would be for our employees to get at least a 1% raise whenever we can give it. So now we're talking about the police officer. I'm glad you are bringing forward with this, and I will support it because I do know you guys need, this is safety for us. And every time something happens in Lafayette, the city of Lafayette, who we require to answer our calls is the police department. And you guys have been doing a fantastic job, and I'd like to make sure that we have some police officers that will continue doing the work for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Call.
I know it's a long evening, so I'm going to be very, very brief. Chief, you and I have discussed this in the past. I don't think that anyone can quarrel with my stance and support in being a champion of your department. We have indicated by our votes in recent history that we wish to better compensate our police officers and our fire department personnel for providing the services they do. But we need to control the issue locally. We should not turn to Baton Rouge to resolve our problems. I think that we have expressed an interest in doing so in the past, and I would assure you, and I would ask that for the police officers out there to understand that by voting no on this resolution tonight, I am not against their being better compensated. Just give us time. We've done quite a bit in the last year. We can do even more in the coming year.
Thank you.
Councilman Terrio.
Include Ms. Toops, if you don't mind. Ms. Toops, get you to respond. I think the whole council was copied on this email by an individual. Basically, they had an issue with dealing with this. It said, since Lafayette sales taxes are divided between capital and non-capital, all of the mandated increase would have to come out of the non-capital portion rather than out of the overall tax. in dealing with this money to provide for the raises. What are your thoughts on that comment?
The figures that Mr. Boudreau gave you were accurate. A 3% increase in the sales taxes collected, not in a TIF, because those TIF monies can't be used for police salaries or can't be used for any salaries, actually. But just a 3% increase in the general sales taxes of the city would result in an $830,000 increase to the city general fund. Out of that, more than half of that would be used for a 2% police department only. That doesn't include the mandated fire department. So practically the whole 3% increase would be consumed by both the police and the fire department. So that would not provide any increases in the city general fund revenues.
Okay. This one's interesting, and Chief, I'm glad you're still here. I've always pushed, 5 priorities of government: roads, drainage, traffic, infrastructure, safety. Okay. Let me kind of throw this out. I had a couple of conversations, and I guess it's more or less their request and not mine, so no disrespect, that they wanted this information to get out, is that with the police department, let's assume you have, say, somebody that has a base salary of $40,000. Just throw it out there. They get a state supplement, I think, of $500 a month, so that's another $6,000 a year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, now in addition to that, and again, I'm being told this, so you can either verify or say I don't know anything about it, but I'm being told that most of the officers make somewhere, can make, or have made, between 12, 17, and 20,000 just in overtime. So if you look at a 40,000 base salary, plus a 6,000 state supplement, which is 46, plus even another 10, that would bring it to 56, or if it's 15, that would bring almost 60,000 is what they're actually making. I mean, what are your thoughts to that?
Well, when you're talking about being a police officer in Lafayette, you're talking about one of the toughest jobs there is.
I agree.
Yes, over time, after a year of being at the PD, they start getting supplemental pay, and after graduating from the academy and whatnot. And there are overtime opportunities, mainly because I don't have enough officers to work all the shifts I have. So yes, they do make money, but these officers are working many times every single day. They're earning every penny. I believe police officers should make $100,000 a year. Now, I'm also realistic. I know we can't afford that.
Right.
But I think they earn every single dime they make. And so I will not apologize for the amount of money they make, particularly if they're making it in overtime. I think that we really have to consider the fact that we are now the lowest paid in the parish. And is that where we want our city of Lafayette officers to be?
Well, and I understand that. I mean, no disrespect, and I was not saying that at all. It's just that when you say, somebody says they're base, that's not actually what they're making. So we throw it out there. This is interesting because, as was made earlier, and again, Ms. Stoops is still hot, Mr. Chair. Ms. Stoops, let's assume that they do get the 2% for, say, 2 or 3 years in a row. Okay, let's assume that happens. So let's go through an analogy here. And then for 1 year, there's a drop in funds that does not allow them to get that additional 2%. It's a recurring amount. So basically, we've had 6% that their salaries have increased over 3 years. It's not going to be reduced, and if sales taxes drop, you're not going to reduce the amount of money they're making, as we've had other discussions. Once the raises are in place, it becomes a recurring expense over and over again. So even for the next year or 2 or 3, even if that amount that sets off the amount that they're going to get, they never hit the 2% if LCG's general fund does not make funds, taking enough sales tax revenue. Will they be able to cover the amount of raises over that time period? I know I'm kind of throwing you off here, but it's going to be a recurring expense no matter what. Let's assume they get raises for 3 years and 3 years they don't. Does the general fund, or will the general fund be able to support the raises for that amount?
Well, it'll depend upon a number of other factors. It'll depend upon whether you're willing to cut in other areas or planned additions don't happen. So it'll all depend on what is done at the entire city general fund level. So I can't say that there won't be money available, but all the raises, especially when they're reoccurring and they're compounding. So at some point, if you don't have the available revenues, then you will have to make reductions somewhere. I don't know where that might be. It would be up to the council at that time. So then you've got to weigh whether if giving them 2% raises for 3 years, and what happens when they go 3 years with no raises. If they're the lowest paid in the city now, or in the parish now, or in the area, is 2% going to get them where they need to be? I don't know the answers to that question. That maybe 2% in a row for 3 years would get them there. Maybe it won't. I don't know. I haven't done any of that data analysis.
What about that, Chief? What do you expound on that a little bit?
I think it's a good start. If I thought that I could come to this council and get a across-the-board raise, I would have done that. I felt like this was the best start we could, with the economy that it is what it is, I felt like this was the best approach for now, to come to you guys with a proposal that would seemingly be fair. To me, it seems fair that we're not asking you to give when you can't. We're asking you to give when you can, and just simply prioritize. And I would remind everyone,